dressed as Paul Atreides who's from the Dune movie. So he's a pretty cool. This is the hardest board game review I've had to do in years, and that's because Dune is a legend among table gamers. First produced in 1979 by the team behind a little game called Cosmic Encounter, Dune is a war game based on Frank Herbert's Dune novels. If you've not read the Dune novels, then I fully recommend the first half of the first book. Or you could watch the David Lynch Dune movie, which is also kind of bad. Or just watch Jodorowsky's Dune, an amazing movie about an amazing movie that was never actually made by a man who hadn't actually read the book.
I didn't read Dune, but I have a friend who said it was fantastic.
You know what? Probably just wait for the new Dune movie coming out in 2020. What matters is that in the 70s and 80s, this board game developed a cult following. It was ferocious and ornate and ornery, and then it fell into licensing hell and wasn't reprinted for about 30 years. Until today! This is the fabulously affordable new edition of Dune from publishers Gale Force 9. Now, I think that for some gaming groups, you'll try this and find that it's the greatest board game you've ever played. And some people will buy it, invite their friends over, and those friends will experience more friction than if you'd filled their pants with sand. I'm just hoping that by the end of this video, you've figured out where you lie on that spectrum. So, Dune is a game for a rather demanding 4 to 6 players. The box will tell you you can play it with 2 or 3, in the same way that I guess you could have a poker night with just 2 people, assuming you can breathe through the choking fumes of mediocrity. What players are going to be doing is warring for control of the planet Dune, playing something like a Machiavellian king of the hill. At the end of a round, to win, you have to control 3 of these 5 dark brown city spaces. Sound easy? Well, actually, it can be. The first of Dune's 1001 quirks is that you might put aside a whole day to play it, and then one strong player might win before you've broken for lunch. I reviewed the Game of Thrones board game recently and got frustrated by this bumper car experience where players couldn't get eliminated but couldn't really win either. In Dune, my gosh, we are out of the bumper cars and players are just lamping one another. This is a game so competitive that since its release, it has developed a tournament scene. So, let's look at the details of this contest. A round of Dune consists of a whopping 9 phases, but I'll just go through the important ones. First, in the storm phase, a storm journeys counterclockwise around the board, annihilating all armies it passes over that aren't sheltering in rocks or cities. Then, you get a spice blow on a random territory. Spice is the game's currency. It's why you're on this planet and players will rush out and collect it. Then, you forget the main board for a second and hold a spice auction for treachery cards. These are basically secret weapons of war, and you only find out what you were bidding on after you've won an auction for a card. Then, there's the recovery phase, where players pay spice to recover destroyed troops from the... you know what? Not pronouncing that. Then you can pay spice to ship troops to the planet's surface. Then you get one move on the surface, just one. It's quite restrained, quite chess-like. At the end of the round, any 2 armies that are sharing a space have a battle, which will always result in at least one of you being, again, annihilated. And finally, you check to see if any one player is holding 3 of the 5 cities on the board. And if they are, they've won. This treachery deck, by the way, you almost need to explain in full before the game starts. Partially because the cards range from some nuclear bombs to an actual donkey, but you also need to clearly point out that most of the deck is made up of 2 kinds of assassination tools, poison and guns, and then the cards that keep you safe from those things. Dune is an extremely demanding game to teach, and not just because it's complicated, or because of all of the weird rules that slavishly simulate Frank Herbert's universe. It's difficult to teach because your friends will make mistakes, and then because the game is so all or nothing in its conflict resolution, when people forget rules, armies get lost. But despite that, your friends are probably going to stick around, because depending on which faction they play, they will adore different phases of Dune. Every player in Dune gets a faction with outrageous powers. The creepy clairvoyant playing House Atreides will have the spice deck next to them and can always peek at where the next blow will happen, or when one of Dune's deadly sandworms is going to show up. Just stay right there. Right there. I've always wanted to ride a sandworm. You... No. Come back. You need to just... Hang on. You just... No. Right? It's a rubber suit! The rubber of the suit is caught on the floor! House Atreides, more importantly, also knows what every single one of these treachery cards is that everyone else is blindly bidding on, and can take notes. But only they can take notes as to which player is holding what. What I like to do when I'm playing House Atreides, I like to look at a card, and when I know it'll be useful to a certain player, I give that player a saucy wink. And I charge for that privilege, because you see, in Dune, players can and absolutely will pay each other for things all the time. And in fact, all of this money that players are bidding on these treachery cards, when someone wins, the winning bid doesn't go to the bank, but to the Emperor. And when players pay to ship troops to Dune, they don't pay the bank, they pay the Spacing Guild, the intergalactic bus drivers of the universe. Think about that for a second. Whenever any of the rest of you pay to move troops to the planet, all of that money goes to one player. If this game is starting to sound like an incestuous nest of lubricated oligarchs, A, congratulations, you might have what it takes to survive here, and B, it gets worse. When you start playing Dune, a team of generals runs out to meet you at your service, but they might not actually be at your service. One of them might be working secretly for another player. Maybe two of them, maybe four of them. You see, at the start of the game, everyone is dealt 4 traitor cards from a deck containing every leader in the game, and you're going to pick one of them to secretly be in your employ. And if another player ever uses that leader in battle against you, the army is led into an ambush and annihilated instantly, and that player loses their treachery cards. It's awful. And the devious team at House Harkonnen get not 1 traitor card, but 4. And whenever they buy a treachery card, they get another one for free. And they can hold 8 treachery cards. So actually fighting House Harkonnen has all the appeal of bumping and grinding with a poison porcupine. Perhaps now you can see the similarities between Dune and Cosmic Encounter. These faction powers you all have are outrageous and fun, but also memorable. When you're all outbidding one another for treachery cards, and then the Emperor player is giggling because you're just giving them more and more money. That's something that everybody's going to be aware of and talking about from turn 1. And this is, I think, part of the reason why Dune has survived for so long, despite being so complicated. It's just fun to learn. But there is a lot of learning involved, and I don't just mean the rules explanation. You might not know this, but board games in 2019 are designed more and more to be white hot from the first time you play them, which is a response to more competition among publishers, but also people playing each of their many games less frequently. Dune crash landed on my table like a grizzled time traveler who had no time for hand-holding. And so your first game of it will be kaleidoscopic in its incompetence. You might be aware of Dune's catchphrase of "He who controls the spice controls the universe," but also "He who controls no spice controls nothing," literally nothing. You'll struggle to even control your temper if you're playing one of the factions in Dune that can run their economy into the ground, because you get spice from holding territory, but if you fail to do that, then you don't have the spice to pay for troops or cards. If you run out of spice, you can't even play the game, which is infuriating. And yet, the spice in Dune is as fascinating an economy as I've seen in any board game. And not just because it flows freely between players, even when you're not busy greasing one another like morally bankrupt bodybuilders, but because spice has different values to different factions. Let's recap. How many board games can you think of that start with a blind auction where only one person knows what you're bidding for, where the units of currency are different to different players, and all of the bids go to another player? That's Dune. And if you find that exciting, that is a very strong sign that you should give this game a shot. But if you find it intimidating, oh boy, we need to talk about combat. A fight in Dune begins with two players being handed these, like that scene in a sci-fi movie where you accidentally have to fight a duel, but you're handed a weapon you've never seen before. But actually, you should be nervous. There are about as many ways to screw up the battle wheel as there are to fail your driving test. So, when a battle begins, the two players will secretly dial a number from 0 up to the number of soldiers they have in the fight. This is your strength, you reveal, and the player with the highest strength wins the fight. All of the loser's forces are eliminated, but the winner loses as many soldiers as they dialed. Confused as to how to play this game? Well, it's too late, we're moving on. You also have to socket one of your leaders in the fight. They're going to add their number to this, but obviously higher leaders have a higher chance of being held as traitors. Also, having a leader opens them up to being knifed, unless of course you've played the corresponding defense card. Importantly, if you reveal and your leader is assassinated, that takes them out of the fight and the game. You also want to watch out for any opponent who's managed to score a laser gun, because this will kill your leader and you can't ever stop it. But you can play a shield, and in the fiction of Dune, if a laser ever hits a shield, it causes a nuclear detonation that kills absolutely everything. Look, there's even some hieroglyphics on the lasgun card, which are either a warning or an instruction manual, depending on your temperament. Here's the fun thing about the combat dials. Well, actually, they're just a fun thing in general, deciding how many troops to definitely lose and which leader to deploy and what weapons, not just to risk losing, because if you lose the fight, you lose your weapons, but also to even let the table know that you have. It's like a delicious layer cake of risk-reward. But what I was gonna say is that these battle wheels are fun because they're kind of like Dune in miniature, in that they're fascinating and they're tense and so clever and are just absolutely brutal.
And they're round!
Doo-doo-doo! I cannot stress this enough. Everybody is going to make bruising mistakes as they learn to play Dune. When the big play you've been planning for an hour and a half ends with the flip of a combat dial and you lose. And in fact, not only do you lose all your forces and your leader gets killed, you lose your two best combat cards. I wouldn't be surprised if most people just check out of the experience right there. How much longer is left in this game? They'll ask. And the answer could be ages, because while this version of Dune cuts the game down to a merciful maximum of 10 turns, what's going to compound the boredom of people sat around the table is that because the forces and cards and schemes all leave the planet but then just get put back on again, turn 3 can feel a lot like turn 6, which can feel a lot like turn 7. Players, I think, are not going to be used to the very 1980s board game design sensation of losing a fight and feeling like you haven't just been knocked down a ladder, but that you're hitting every rung on the way down. But personally, when I screwed up in Dune, I kind of loved it. And I was put in mind of our review of classic game The War of the Ring. A game that was also old, awkward, and tediously servile to the fiction it was simulating, and yet, after our first long crap afternoon with it, we were hooked. That game was a jewel that we were slowly tugging out from behind all of our dirty mistakes. Dune is much the same thing. Players are in for hours that feel like they're hiking uphill, but if you've got an eye for strategy, this game will yield to your examination, like you're turning a key in a lock and you can feel all of the tumblers click over. Yes, you just lost your biggest army in a horrible battle, but you can see all of the decisions that led you up to that point. Yes, the Emperor is dominating their game. But that's because you've all been unthinkingly handing them money every round for hours. If there is a reason that you will hate Dune, it's because there is always another instance of your biggest army being wiped out waiting for you around the corner. Perhaps because of something as stupid as you forgot about the superstorm that is constantly orbiting the board. But if there's a reason you'll love Dune, it's because this game lets you be as cunning as a Bene Gesserit witch. The Bene Gesserit were what Star Wars ripped off to make the Jedi. They're also cooler than Jedi. Don't at me. Unless it's to say that you agree about the Bene Gesserit, in which case, that's fine. Do you remember at the start of the game you picked one traitor from a hand of 4? There is a galaxy brain moment playing Dune where, of course, the 3 people you didn't pick aren't being held by anyone, and you could sell that information to their employers. That's just the best. So much of Dune is just the best. If you told me this was your favourite game, I would say, sure. And you might think I'm being condescending. It's not true. I've got nothing to say to it. It's somewhat inarguable. We haven't even talked about allies yet. Oh my god! Alliances are the mechanic that Dune is maybe the most famous for. Whenever a sandworm shows up... Well, whenever they do show up, it's cause for all of the game's factions to... Ah! Right. When that happens, play enters a Nexus phase and all of the players can ally. And this falls upon the game like gentle desert rain because suddenly everyone's being honest about their board states. Look how good I am. I've got this card. I've got this much money. And you're trying to get the best ally you can. Because when you ally, those 2 players will be able to win together. Not by controlling 3 cities individually, but between the 2 of them holding 4. Not only that, they get a weak version of one another's special faction power that's theirs, so they become stronger. And this is so exquisitely funny and entertaining because whenever the alliance phase ends, you end up looking at a board that's completely different because now, of course, blue and red are working together. And then when another alliance phase happens, the game only gets better because your ally might break off and form an alliance with your mortal enemy who's doing better than you are. And so you join up with their mortal enemy. I'm not being sort of exaggerative when I say that Dune is the best. It's genuinely some of the most entertaining board gaming I've ever had. There is a card in the Treachery deck called Truth Trance, and it just lets you ask any player a yes or no question that they must answer. And after half an hour of saying to my friend I wouldn't attack them, they played that card and asked if I was really going to attack them. And I said yes. And the table collapsed into hysterics. But despite this game's near mythical reputation, it wouldn't be a shut up and sit down review without us bursting some bubbles like a bubble bursting... Matt, have you got the goof generator? What happened to the old goof generator?
Do you see this? Put your right hand in the box.
What's in the box?
Goofs. What do you feel?
Goofs! Bursting bubbles like a very dry boy whose parents were killed by bubbles. Yeah, sure. So some of Dune hasn't aged well, but some of it I'm pretty sure was bad even in the 80s. Let's talk about this planet, which is a hellish jigsaw of oddly shaped territories that make movement really weird, but that's bearable. What's way more annoying is that the storm affects individual pie segments, so that even when you're within one space, you can be within 2 different areas of it, and then you have to teach all these fiddly rules about when units can and can't move or fight based on whether they are or aren't in the storm in the segment of the It's annoying. And then a weird side effect of the map having very important small spaces and very big useless ones is that you need these tiny playing pieces that feel like you're nudging around stacks of fingernail clippings, and yet so much of the board is vacant. But you know what? This is all small change compared to my real criticism of Dune, which is that you can either play it in basic or advanced mode, and both of them are annoying. Okay. Over the decades that Dune has been around, it has amassed a fair few optional and expansion rules that should or shouldn't be played with, depending on who you ask. An example of a rule that I think most players are going to think is bad is that when you're using the battle wheel, in addition to setting a number and a leader, and then having a card, you also have to spend space for every soldier in the battle that should count at full strength, otherwise all of the soldiers count at half strength. As if players didn't have enough to worry about already. You can't even hold that much stuff with one hand. This swamps Dune with an additional layer of hellish maths. But the point is that this mess of extant rules around Dune means there's no true way to play the game. Now, before this version of Dune, Fantasy Flight got the license for the game, but not the setting, and put out a version of Dune called Rex, set in the Twilight Imperium universe. Rex gets a lot of flack from diehard fans of the original Dune, but what I liked about Rex was that the designers cherry-picked all of the most fun ideas from Dune, left out the stuff that nobody liked, and presented it as a single, coherent way to play. We don't have that with this edition. What you get instead in this new edition of Dune is a basic mode, which is all most people will ever play, and then an advanced mode, which is basically like a warehouse for all of Dune's most tedious and complicated rules. Every faction gets a new player. Then you get the advanced combat and increased spice flow. There's a special use of the Karama card that is only written down in the manual. The reason that this is a problem, though, is that in the advanced mode is some of the most Dune-y ideas in Dune. There's the fact that the Fremen get a whole deck, otherwise unused, of storm cards. So the faction that lives here knows exactly how far the storm is going to move every turn. That's awesome. The Harkonnen get to take prisoners when they win a fight, cementing their status as the villains around the table that you just don't want to fight. Or best of all, the Bene Gesserit get a power that whenever anyone ships any army to the planet, they always come with a helpful Bene Gesserit advisor, who then becomes a soldier as soon as they wander off by themselves, which is interesting and thematic and hilarious. We should attack the city tonight, I'm sure of it.
Sure, my lord. Sounds great.
Yeah. Do you have to hold that, that close?
Oh, it's kind of a religious thing. It's a symbolic.
Oh, it's part of the.
Yeah.
I didn't mean any offense.
Oh, it's fine. Just if you could just keep. I'd advise you keep looking that way. Just keep looking that way.
Of course.
And for now, just waiting until.
Look, I get it. I understand that these basic and advanced modes were Gale Force 9's best case scenario for pleasing everybody who's been waiting 30 years for a new version of Dune, while also ensuring that all of the rules are balanced because you're playing with none of the extra stuff or all of it. But for people like me, and probably people like you, this decision is just annoying. If I play basic, then I'm leaving all of these cool components and ideas that I paid for in the box. And if I play advanced, I'm teaching all of my friends these rules that demonstrably make the game slower without making it better. And in another example of Gale Force 9 being perhaps afraid of change, Dune has 36 characters, 35 white people and a raisin, which shows a real lack of imagination when the rest of the game is almost entirely brown. And this is despite Dune having so many Arabic-sounding naming conventions. The characters in the books declare actual jihads. One of the factions are a desert people, and they have announced the casting of the 2020 Dune movie, and it's way more representative of what you'd expect from this setting in a way that leaves this feeling jarring. Finally, and this is perhaps unforgivable considering how old this game is, but Dune is full of rules queries that the thin manual makes no effort to answer. For example, the Kurama cards that everybody can get stop any one use of a player's power. But the Emperor's power is that they are rich, so can you stop them from spending money? Or the Bene Gesserit has an amazing ability, because don't forget, so much of Dune is amazing. They can pick a faction that's going to win and a turn they're going to do it. And this is completely secret. But if that faction wins on that turn, the Bene Gesserit win instead. That's great. But can you use a Kurama card on it? Because the game is already over at that point. Additionally, in a deviation, oh, thank you very much, from most board games, deals that you make in Dune, if you pay a player that much money and say, you'll do this, right? That is binding, which is great fun. But then what that means is that if the circumstances around that deal change, then do you still pay them the money? If I say I'm going to pay you money and if you do this, then you half do this, do I pay you half the money? That's probably enough, Matthew. Thank you very much. Oh, that's gone right to the gentleman vegetables. Oh, I can't even stand up. And so, finally, we arrive at the question of should you buy Dune, which is so difficult for me to answer that I will be eternally grateful to Gale Force 9 for making this edition affordable and not some cash grab full of miniatures, plastic first player tokens or whatever. This box is just $40, which makes it that much easier for me to say that if your group is interested in heavy games, why not just buy it and try it? But if you're still on the fence, then I would have you ask yourself, how often do you really play the board games that you have? I always say that with Twilight Imperium, you can play that game just once or twice, and it's so memorable and fun that you feel like you got your money's worth. With Dune, as I've said, I feel like it hews a lot closer to the War of the Ring, where your first game may well be this uncomfortable, enervating disaster, but on repeat plays with the same group, you can get rid of that friction and enjoy a smoother, more entertaining experience that is up there with the best that board gaming has to offer. But War of the Ring only requires that you find one other like-minded person. With Dune, you're looking at 4 or ideally 5 other people, and that is a huge ask. So, for me, I think I'm going to be keeping Dune. I think I'm going to be all the happier for having this in my collection. I think this game is a masterpiece. But like a lot of masterpieces, I don't know what this game is going to be good for, aside from making me feel good, but also gathering dust. That's the end of the review. Can I get in the bath now? Can I get in the bath? Please.
What, in my bath?
Yes!
Okay, fine.
Yes!
Go and get in the bath. I get bath. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Hey, you know what's happening in October? It's Shucks. It's the Shut Up and Sit Down convention, and we are getting really excited for it. It's the biggest convention in Canada, and we work super hard to make it the friendliest board game convention around. If you're interested, there's a couple of videos right on one side of my head probably. One of them is a little bit of information telling you what Shucks is, and the other is an update with all the funnest stuff that we've added to it just in the last month. I hope that I'll see some of you there.